If you ignore this, you'll regret it later. You might not even realize it, but the way someone avoids eye contact can tell a deep and painful story. It's not just shyness or social anxiety. Sometimes it's a survival instinct. That's especially true for people who've experienced narcissistic abuse. Stick around until the end, as you might see yourself in this, or maybe someone you love. Today we'll discuss the 10 subtle ways narcissistic abuse victims avoid eye contact. Are you ready for number 1? Glancing away, quickly. Have you ever felt like eye contact was a trap? It's not just shyness, it's survival. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, even a simple glance can feel like an invitation for confrontation. You might lift your eyes for a second, but then, almost instinctively, you look away. Ramani Durvasula, a psychologist specializing in narcissistic abuse, explains that narcissists use intense eye contact to assert dominance and control, making victims feel exposed and powerless. Over time, your brain learns that locking eyes with the wrong person can lead to accusations, manipulation, or even silent intimidation. So you adapt by avoiding it altogether. The good news is that awareness is the first step to healing. Recognizing why you avoid eye contact gives you the power to reclaim it, one steady glance at a time. Let's talk about number 2, looking down while speaking. Have you experienced looking someone in the eye and feeling so uncomfortable? If you've been through narcissistic abuse, you might not even realize how often you look down while speaking. It's not just a habit, it's a learned survival response. Narcissists thrive on dominance, and eye contact can feel like a challenge to their control. Judith Herman, a trauma expert, explains that prolonged exposure to intimidation rewires a person's instinctual responses, making them more likely to adopt submissive behaviors to avoid conflict. In other words, you've been trained to shrink yourself, to avoid anything that might trigger their anger. So, when you talk, your eyes automatically drop, as if silently asking for permission to exist. The next time you catch yourself looking down, take a deep breath, lift your gaze, and remind yourself you have every right to be seen. Let's move on to number 3, focusing on objects instead. Have you ever found yourself staring at your phone, pretending to read a text that doesn't exist? You're not alone. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, making eye contact can feel like stepping into a battlefield. So, instead, you focus on objects. Your phone, a book, a coffee cup. Anything to avoid locking eyes with someone who might judge, criticize, or try to control you. Pete Walker, a therapist specializing in complex trauma, explains that trauma survivors often develop avoidance behaviors to protect themselves from perceived threats, even when no real danger is present. In other words, your brain learned that eye contact can lead to conflict, so it found a workaround, distraction. Trauma expert Gabor Mate says, healing happens when we learn to feel safe in connection. That means slowly challenging yourself to lift your eyes, even if it's just for a few seconds. You don't have to force anything. Just remind yourself that not everyone is a threat. Now, let's continue to number 4, blinking excessively or darting eyes. You try to focus on someone's face, but before you know it, your eyes are darting around the room or blinking too much. It's like a subconscious escape plan. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, your brain stays on high alert, constantly scanning for threats, even when none are there. Stephen Porges, creator of the polyvagal theory, explains that hypervigilance is the nervous system's way of trying to keep you safe after prolonged exposure to fear or control. Your body learned that eye contact could mean confrontation, manipulation, or worse. So now your eyes react before you even realize it. This response doesn't just turn off once the narcissist is out of your life. You might find yourself in a normal conversation, but your eyes are still doing that rapid search, as if expecting danger to pop up at any moment. Noticing when your eyes start darting and taking a deep breath can help bring you back to the present. Over time, you'll learn that not every glance is a threat. Sometimes, it's just a connection waiting to happen. You shouldn't miss number 5. Avoiding mirrors. What do you see when you look in the mirror? If you've been through narcissistic abuse, that reflection might not feel like yours anymore. Avoiding mirrors isn't just about insecurity. It's about avoiding the harsh inner dialogue that was planted in your mind. Narcissists are masters at making you doubt yourself, constantly criticizing your looks, your worth, or even your very existence. Over time, their voice becomes your own, and staring into the mirror can feel like staring at a version of yourself that was never good enough. Caroline Leaf, a cognitive neuroscientist, explains that toxic words and experiences reshape our thought patterns, leading us to internalize negativity even when the external threat is gone. So, instead of facing those thoughts, you might find yourself glancing away or avoiding mirrors altogether. But here's the truth. Those words they fed you were never yours to begin with. Healing starts when you begin rewriting that inner script, even if it means starting small. Maybe today, you just meet your own gaze for a second. Maybe tomorrow, you remind yourself that your reflection is yours, not theirs. Are you still up for number 6? Tilting their head away. Slightly, instead of fully turning away, you tilt your head just enough to seem engaged while still protecting yourself. It's your brain's way of saying, I'm here, but not too much. The tricky part is that this habit can stick with you long after the narcissist is gone. You might catch yourself tilting your head even in safe conversations, as if bracing for criticism that isn't coming. But the truth is, you don't have to shrink yourself anymore. Healing means recognizing that not everyone is waiting to tear you down. Therapist Beverly Engel, author of The Emotionally Abusive Relationship, says, reclaiming confidence starts with small acts of self-assertion. So next time you notice yourself angling away, try straightening up, even just a little. It's a simple shift, but it sends a powerful message to yourself and the world that you're no longer hiding. Let's keep it moving to number 7. Shielding their eyes with hair, glasses, or hats. It's not always just about style. It's about protection. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, even eye contact can feel invasive, like it gives people access to your thoughts, emotions, or vulnerabilities. So, without even realizing it, you start using physical barriers, pulling your hair over your face, adjusting your glasses, or wearing a hat low enough to shadow your eyes. In other words, these small actions aren't just habits, they're shields, helping you feel less exposed to a world that once felt dangerous. The problem is that these barriers can keep you from truly connecting with others, even when you want to. But here's the truth, you don't need to hide anymore. Trauma therapist Shannon Thomas, author of Healing from Hidden Abuse, says, breaking free from past conditioning starts with allowing yourself to be seen on your terms. Here comes number 8. Using overly animated facial expressions. Have you ever caught yourself smiling too much or overreacting just to keep things normal? Instead of engaging directly, you overcompensate with big smiles, raised eyebrows, or exaggerated nods. Anything to keep attention away from the fact that you're avoiding someone's gaze. Carol McBride, a therapist specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery, explains that survivors often develop performative behaviors to keep the peace, making sure they appear agreeable and unthreatening. In other words, those forced expressions aren't just habits. They're survival tactics meant to keep you safe from judgment or conflict. The problem is, this can make it harder to reconnect with your real emotions. Trauma specialist Thema Bryant says, healing begins when you stop performing and start honoring your authentic self. That means giving yourself permission to relax, to be neutral, and to not always put on a show. Next time you feel the urge to overdo it, take a breath and remind yourself. You don't need to entertain or prove anything. Real connection comes from being seen, not from performing. Moving on to number 9. Turning their body slightly away. Instead of facing someone head-on, you instinctively turn your body slightly away, creating just enough distance to feel safer. This small shift in posture is your brain's way of saying, I'm here, but not too close, reducing the risk of confrontation or unwanted attention. You might notice yourself angling away from kind, trustworthy people, those who don't intend to hurt you. But healing means recognizing that not everyone is a threat. Therapist Leslie Becker Phelps says, trauma responses are learned, but they can also be unlearned with self-awareness and practice. That doesn't mean forcing yourself into discomfort, but rather making small adjustments, standing a little straighter, facing someone just a bit more directly. Over time, you'll realize that you don't have to shrink away anymore. You deserve to take up space, fully and confidently. Finally, we're down to number 10. Looking past the person, instead of at them. It's not that you're uninterested. It's that eye contact feels like too much. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, direct engagement can feel like stepping into a spotlight where every word, expression, and reaction is being judged. So, instead of locking eyes, you find a safer focus, their forehead, mouth, or even a spot just over their shoulder. By looking past someone rather than at them, you create the illusion of engagement while maintaining a psychological barrier. But here's the problem. This habit can keep you feeling disconnected, even in safe conversations. You might avoid eye contact with people who truly care about you, not because you distrust them, but because your brain still associates direct connection with danger. Trauma therapist Ariel Lang says, healing requires small conscious efforts to re-establish a sense of safety in social interactions. That doesn't mean forcing yourself into intense eye contact overnight, but rather taking small steps, holding someone's gaze for an extra second, reminding yourself that not everyone is trying to tear you down. Over time, you'll realize that real connection isn't something to fear. It's something you deserve. Healing takes time, but it has to start. Avoiding eye contact isn't just a habit. It's a sign of deeper wounds that need attention. Ignoring it won't make it go away. If this is you, don't just accept it as your new normal. You can break free from the grip of narcissistic abuse, but only if you face it head-on. That means setting boundaries, seeking support, and reclaiming your confidence, one step at a time.